Hi, welcome to Studio Stillwater. I'm Michelle Charles.
And I'm Chris Peters.
And we're here today with school board candidates Camille DeYong and Carle Santelli. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Good. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. So we wanted to sit down and just kind of have we're calling it a critical conversation, but it doesn't mean anyone has to be critical of anyone. What we mean is critical in terms of talking about important things.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
You guys are both vying for the seat in Ward 1. Is that Ward 5?
No, it is Ward 1.
Ward
It is
1.
one, yes.
Okay. All right. So you two are both running for the seat in Ward 1 on the Stillwater Board of Education.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. And that is basically more on the east side of town. Is that correct?
Southeast.
Southeast. Okay. All right. So we wanted to just kind of, I don't know, let's just start the conversation off with a basic, very broad question. And you guys are in very different places. I'm going to say that because Camille, you're experienced on the school board, and Carle, this is your first time running, and you're running as,
Yes.
as a parent of young children in the district.
Yes.
I guess I'm interested in finding out, what have you learned during the course of this campaign? Carle, you're the newbie. Let's start with you.
I've learned that sometimes people can be jerks. I've had a few nasty comments put on my Facebook campaign page that I've did some work and deleted and whatnot. They weren't happy with my husband's now taken care of criminal history. And apparently my husband's history affects me and my abilities somehow.
So they made it personal.
They did, yeah.
So you took that step into the public forum, and then immediately people are like, oh, I'm going to go search and dig around.
So people are digging through your family members' backgrounds.
So that is awful.
It really is.
I mean,
It really
terrible.
is. Like, yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. But
I think that's,
it is what it is, so.
yeah, one of those things where, national level politics or
Exactly.
state politics, you kind of almost, unfortunately, we almost kind of expect those type of things to happen. But for like local school board,
It seems odd, doesn't it?
It really is.
Fine.
But
What's your end game? I mean,
exactly. It says, in my opinion, it says a lot more about them than it does about me.
probably.
So,
and the ease with which social media allows somebody to go and do that with not a lot of repercussions
exactly.
besides you just deleting their
Yeah.
comment.
I deleted, I blocked them, and they decided, or I even tried to tell Facebook, hey, this is harassment, and they wouldn't take it down. So
Yeah.
I had to do my own for the best of that I could. And
Well, has there been something more like on the positive side that you've learned?
that it's actually kind of fun and interesting to get to know everyone and interact and see this side of the community.
Very good.
Yeah.
What about you, Camille?
Well, the first thing I learned is it's darned expensive to do these things.
Yes.
I had no idea that those little yard signs were $25 a piece or whatever they are.
Are you kidding me?
I had no idea. I didn't even
I
bother looking
was
that up. 'cause-
Shocked, or at least where I was checking.
Sure.
Anyway, my budget was not real big, so
Right. Well, it's school board, and,
Well,
and you're
I mean,
serving for free.
and it's a pandemic, and
Yeah,
you know,
so many things.
So anyway, that was the first thing, and I think the second thing I learned is how important it is to examine why you're doing this, because it seems like an obvious thing to say. I'm running for blah blah blah, whatever your elevator speech is, but I really had to think about that, and what do I bring that's different from what you bring or somebody else or whatever. So that, surprisingly enough, I had to think about that.
And I do think that's really one of the values for the voters and for the community of having these contested elections. I don't think there's a lot of value in tearing each other down and tearing each other apart, but I do think that there's value in having more than one viewpoint and in having to have these public conversations about issues, because
And state what you believe.
exactly.
Position is, yeah.
Because if you don't, I mean, you just automatically go into office and you don't even really have to examine what you think about some things.
And that's a great point. I don't mean to
no.
babble on, but because I was appointed the first time and served out a 2-year appointment, and then I ran unopposed. So I never had to answer these questions. I was just like, okay. And anyway, it's been good. It's been really good. So
well,
I
very good.
appreciate you
Awesome.
filing.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be able to help you out in that way also.
Anytime.
Exactly.
No, yeah. What's the point of democracy and politics and elections and representation if there's nobody to not necessarily oppose, but just
you never have to
challenge.
You
a
never
different
have
offering.
to answer the questions, like the League of Women Voters news press questions, and so and unfortunately, school board's one of those things that not a lot of people run for.
Across the board. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm talking across communities.
Yeah.
You would be shocked at how many seats are unopposed. I mean, a majority of the time, really.
Right.
And I think it's because it's such a big commitment in terms of time and training and all that. And it really does take someone who is incredibly dedicated to be willing to step up and commit, honestly, half a decade of their life to doing this.
Yeah.
It's a long term.
It is a long term.
Yeah.
And the only thing, because we've had to appoint several board members in the last whatever years. And it's always interesting who applies to be appointed. And anyway, it's an interesting process, but it is a commitment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been kind of not kind of, I don't even know why I put that qualifier on there. These have been very interesting and kind of tough times.
Yes.
Over the last year.
Say that.
Yes. I
For
know.
everybody.
I am a master of understatement. Anyway, so I'm thinking that, these have been difficult times for everybody, and school board has certainly been in the spotlight. I mean, it's one of those positions that people don't normally think about a whole lot. And then all of a sudden, the school board is having a huge impact on everybody's day-to-day life.
Yeah.
What kind of challenges do you guys see facing the school district and the school board moving ahead, like, some of just the big ones? And, what are your opinions on those? You guys decide who goes first.
I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, the most immediate challenge is getting kids caught up that need to be caught up. And so, the district is offering free summer school, and we'll be making announcements about how that's going to be structured in a few weeks. The longer term, and this is not an original idea, Steve Hallgren had talked about this early on, is learning from what we've experienced. And in particular, the virtual learning. What went well, what didn't, Edgenuity, what's the preschool one? Seesaw, thank you very much. Because some of those are good and some of them not so good. And so just trying to figure out, because we think that's going to be part of the offering going forward, the virtual option.
So just a quick question on that before Carly talks about, her thoughts on it. The district has been, there have been concerns about, districts losing students to some of the virtual charter schools. Do you feel like the lessons learned over this will help the district to maybe compete better with them and try to keep more of their students?
I would hope so. Because, lots of people still want to be affiliated with Stillwater Public Schools. They want to play sports. They want to be in the orchestra. They want to, be in the band. There are avenues through the online charters, but it's not quite the same. So anyway, I hope and expect that we will be very competitive.
Okay. So what were you thinking about challenges, Carly?
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge, besides getting the kids caught up, because we really do, is making sure that there's Chromebooks or some type of laptop for all of the students. When I was in high school, I went to Meridian part-time, and some of the high school kids there from just a few surrounding schools, they were given laptops at the start of their high school career and they're tiny little schools.
Mm-hmm.
And
that
Stillwater doesn't offer that.
Yeah.
Even now. Then or now. And I think that's something that we should really consider, even if it's just a loaning program or something. But those laptops they got to keep them if they graduated. But
good idea.
so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Carly, I remember when we talked to you before, I mean, when we talk about I think one thing that this last year has really thrown into stark relief is the magnitude of that digital divide.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the district obviously scrambled and really tried to do the best it could. I really do
Agreed.
believe that to fill those needs. But I also remember you saying that even with the hotspot, it doesn't work. It doesn't work so well everywhere.
Exactly.
And it's not really, a perfect solution.
Yeah.
What do you guys think needs to be done to address some of that? Because I don't see education in general becoming any less dependent on having access to the internet or doing things online.
Technology. Yeah.
Honestly, I think I've heard of PVNet offering internet downtown, and I think that might need to be scoped to like a city level instead of just downtown, because not everyone lives downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's a good
something
idea.
like that, but that's more of a city option or city council thing than it is more school board. But it's something we can maybe
and
work together on.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm glad you said that, because the pandemic uncovered a lot of things that schools have taken on the responsibility for. Feeding children, the internet access because school went online. And again, I think the technology department did the best they could with the budget we had at the time. We tried our best, I am told, and I believe, if a family had, 3 kids and needed 3 Chromebooks, we would do our best to get those to them. That having been said, I mean, the internet access at my mother's house out by the bowling alley is terrible. So, when I think about having to use those really bandwidth-heavy programs, So I think this is something that perhaps we'll start having conversations, with the city and the state and, the government to see, how can we all share in this?
It does seem like this is something that's going to require partnerships. It's going to require more than one entity to address.
Agreed.
So, I mean, and that was one thing I think that's come out of this as well, is the partnerships that the district has had and how connected the schools are with the community, both the community depending on the schools and the schools being able to reach out to resources in the community when necessary. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? What did you see?
Well, we definitely had people step up in the community and offer masks or, other PPE. We had one business that wanted to anonymously donate $50,000. And
wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we haven't, disclosed who that was, but there was a lot of support and we continue to get a lot of offers of support. And so that's been really refreshing.
Yeah. I have seen a lot of that too. Like the hotspots were, I guess, donated or something through T-Mobile and Verizon. So that was pretty nice too.
I mean,
even if they were a little spotty at times.
Right. Well, what types of things would have made more of a difference for you as a parent who's suddenly in the position of teaching your children at home?
Maybe a better crash course on how to go about doing the home teaching.
You mean like just the education aspect of it itself, or the programs, or what?
It took me a little bit to figure out how to work the Chromebook, because I've never used a Chromebook in my life. How to navigate Google Classroom, just maybe a better crash course, because I'm used to a laptop, not a Chromebook.
Well, I think
They're different.
that leads to the idea of, and Camille, maybe you can maybe have some thoughts on this with your experience, but that the local public schools maybe originally were charged with not just educating kids, but also educating the community. And that, not to say, hey, schools, throw another thing on your plate. You got to educate us adults. But, and of course, like in this scenario, so I'm a very technical person, and we chose the online stuff because I knew that it was going to be a bunch of random programs and I could go through and figure them out and help my kids get through it. But then when it actually happened, and then also knowing that, like, well, this was new for the teachers too.
Yeah.
And the teachers were very open of like, this is new to us. So if you've got like technical questions, we'll do our best.
Yeah.
And I tried to be like, okay, I can put my head down. We will just figure it out. But all the time I was thinking of the parents that do not have the experience or the innate ability that I've just, had working in technology of like, oh my gosh, that some of these laptops are probably being thrown through the window.
Oh,
I wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously didn't have a child going through that, but I had many, many videos and pictures of, families and kids having meltdowns, and it just absolutely broke my heart.
And it's because it wasn't like, hey, we're deciding to do this virtual learning option. We're all forced into it. But I think ideally there would be some sort of onboarding process and education. And I mean, we did switch one of our kids to Epic because he had some special needs that the Edgenuity stuff for like dyslexia wasn't gonna consider at all. Like it didn't have anything except for just, it could read some portions of the screen and stuff to you, but there was nothing special. So we also got to go through what it's like to onboard with Epic.
Interesting.
Which Epic, obviously, like they've been around, they've been doing this a while. Their onboarding process on teaching the parents, not really there either.
Wow.
Really?
Interesting.
You'd think they'd have it down.
I've heard so many parents
They
just
really-
love Epic, and
Really?
so that's interesting.
Well, I think maybe they love it because that teacher is really doing a lot more. My son, he will probably be enrolling back into Stillwater Public Schools in the fall. But he can go, if we let him, and do his class work a couple hours on the computer. He's in 3rd grade, and we don't have to do anything. And then he's, it's scheduled, so we're at noon, okay, he does a Zoom or whatever with his teacher. But I think why some parents like it is naturally very hands-off.
Oh, I see.
Which
the parents don't have to be
exactly
involved. I see.
Where with Edgenuity in the Stillwater Public Schools, it was very hands-on because we're all trying to figure it out at the same time.
Yeah.
So, Chris, would you say that, I mean, maybe part of that difference is that, one of those online charter schools, that's what they do. That's all they do. That's their system. And
I was expecting a lot better, honestly.
Right. Whereas Stillwater Public Schools, you guys had to pivot. You guys had to offer, online for students who had never had that before at levels that had never been offered before, and figure out the technology part of it, figure out the platforms, get
teachers
the actual
figuring out
tools,
the lessons.
and the teachers figuring out the lessons, and then, being prepared to, because I remember some school board meetings where there were discussions about, the teachers having to be fully prepared to either teach in person or online any given week at the,
or
and
hybrid.
they find out on Friday
hybrid.
or some or some combination of the two.
All the combinations. You just got to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Just be ready for anything, basically. And I
Curveball,
can't even
switch-ups,
imagine.
all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they probably did feel like there were a lot of curveballs coming at them.
For sure.
Oh, there were. The reason it felt that way is because there were. So
Right. But I mean, for the parents too, I know that one thing the school board really did seem to be trying to address was that variability, because it seemed like that was something that made people so crazy this year. Finding out on Friday what your life was going to be like the next week. and having to plan accordingly over the weekend. It just drove people nuts. And I don't blame them. I mean, that is really hard when you've got little kids and you've got to juggle all this stuff or figure out childcare or your work schedule or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's brutal. So there were efforts made to, kind of give people a little more consistency. But then it seemed like people weren't really happy about that either, because then it locked
They
you
kept
into
wanting
something.
to take another mile.
Well, or it seemed like it locked you into something then, and you were, and then if the numbers went down, you couldn't just like go back all of a sudden. I don't know. It just seemed like it was a really tough situation where there wasn't going to be any solution that was going to 100% please everybody or serve everyone's needs.
Is there ever?
Not even close.
Is there ever,
Yeah.
though?
That's true. There hardly ever is, right?
I mean, we get 60%, right? Can we get to 60%?
That's more than half. It's a majority.
But then the other ones are louder sometimes, and then they feel like they're the majority.
Oh, that's true.
Well, that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Based on volume.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the thing, is that because we did have pretty loud voices from both ends,
And if you're happy, you're not yelling.
Good point. Good point.
So that silent majority, that idea of those people that are just not rocking the boat in the middle.
Yeah, it's when we started, I know, as we were rolling along, and we have a very educated community of, a community that is passionate about their kids, passionate about education, and it's not just parents. I mean, there were a lot of other
Right.
folks involved too. And so, all the emails that we would get and whatnot, some of them were painful to read. I mean, to your point, Carly, and I finally, one of the principals, Uva Gordon, told me, he said, I ask people to call me. If they email me, I don't respond versus, via email. And I thought, okay. Because, those weeks we were getting 100, 200 emails a week. I just put an automatic response, and I said, I'm reading your emails. I'd love to talk to you about this. Here's my cell phone number.
Oh, man. I think I might know somebody who got one of those auto responses. And they were like, what? But I was like, you're one of hundreds.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
know.
you'd be spending every waking and sleeping hour
Well,
trying to
and half the time you didn't
respond to
have
them.
good answers. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Right.
couldn't tell them what they wanted to hear.
Right.
And again, you're one board member
Right.
out of 5. And,
Did Mr.
and
Gordon find, though, that when he did get people on the phone, that maybe it
That it
changed
was
the tone?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I did too. So I thought that was just a brilliant idea.
It's harder to
You can't
abuse
do that
someone
on
to their
Facebook.
face. I mean, let's face it.
Well, yeah.
I was wondering, talking about communication and expanding on that. I mean, this has been not even during these most recent challenging times, but ongoing. Communication is just a challenge. I mean, getting the information out, getting it out in a way that, meeting people where they are to be sure they get it in a timely manner, or that two-way communication where you get the feedback from the parents and the community about what's going on and what they need, really. I mean, let's talk about communication in general. Do you guys feel like the school district's communication is where it needs to be? And if not, what would you improve? What would you change?
Honestly, I think it's a little lower than I would like as a parent. It really could improve.
How could it improve?
Instead of a bunch of just generic emails going out, maybe personalize it just a little bit, or say, I really don't know because I'm not there yet, but I think it could improve. Just a lot of the emails I get are from my son's school or the school board are just very, very,
Just the facts, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Does it feel like a canned response, or
Yeah.
like sort of a prepared statement rather
Basically,
than
yeah.
they're talking to you?
yeah,
Okay.
it just doesn't feel like you're acknowledged.
Ah, see? And there's the emotional part of it. That's a big
Yeah.
thing right there.
And I had the interesting aspect of one of my kids went to one elementary school and the other went to a different elementary school. So we had different principals with different communication styles. and different teachers with different communication styles. If I'm not running here, but as a parent, I just want to see the teachers get some like professional development on not like email, but just concise communication. And obviously, maybe there's one teacher that did get some education in that, and they go through and like, they can bullet point, get their point across, while the other teacher writes us a novel.
Right.
And it's one paragraph.
One whole paragraph.
Yeah, I'm
Pages.
talking like,
Oh.
no,
I know.
I'm talking no paragraph breaks. like, I mean, I can't say anything.
Right.
I got really bad grades in school, but it's just one of those. You look at it and you're like, oh, there's the email from that teacher. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're gonna have to like prepare
Well,
to
and
try
it's, sometimes
to
it's
try
the way
to
you
process
think,
this.
because
Yeah.
I'm a bullet girl, and I'm not a rambling girl.
Right.
Because email is tough. People, you think, I learned that as an instructor at OSU, I learned that I could not assume that all students read and understood my email.
Mm-hmm.
That I
Yes.
had to keep reiterating because it's just tough. People are busy and they get spam mail and they get, all kinds of notices.
Yeah.
So if you're getting, how many kids do you have?
Well, we had 3. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, 3 kids, 3 different teachers, 3 different schools. I mean, you've got 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Only
So-
one in school, but yeah, 2.
But you
Right.
probably get emails or something from the other. I
Yeah.
mean, text messaging. I think it's just a matter of us. Can it be improved? Heck yeah. And I think these are good ideas. I think it's a matter of knowing your audience and giving them more of what they want.
Yeah, and
So-
sometimes the right tool, I could see, for the teacher that just has a lot to say, like, well, maybe that's where a video
Oh,
or
good
something
point.
like
Yeah.
comes in, like a different tool,
Medium.
or where
Yeah.
I've some like a short text message might be like their better way, but
Like
I
it's
guess
pajama day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or
more options for the teachers to find the tools that they're comfortable with to communicate
Good
more
idea.
with the parents. And then I'd say for me, the bottom rule is any communication is better than no communication.
Agreed.
And there was sometimes where with one of the schools with the principals, just like it's been months and there's not been a single email. So and then sometimes it's like, well, I'm on the email list, but my partner, she got the email. And then there's some where I get it and she doesn't. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's that whole communications bundle.
Well, and life is complicated, and families are more complicated than we've ever, I think, seen before. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be responding to that.
Yeah.
We definitely should. So good ideas.
Well, I mean, the challenge, I think, is that, and as a media company, as someone who works with newspapers, I mean, we're constantly struggling with how do we reach people? How do we communicate with people? How do we meet people where they are?
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. It is not an easy thing to do. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone has
it gets
easy
more
answers.
complicated, like where people are. Well, now people
are
could
more
be
fragmented,
in
right?
more places.
Yeah.
Now people are everywhere.
Yeah.
And how do you go everywhere?
You don't really know where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, how do you reach them? Are you going to reach somebody via the print? Are you going to reach somebody via a podcast? Are you going to reach
Right.
somebody via a social media tweet? Or are
Sure.
you just going to have to reach somebody by like physically getting together?
Right. And so, for the school district, I mean, you guys are facing, very similar, and you're communicating with people on the fly about things that impact their families and what they're going to do maybe the next day or within a couple of days. And so that's a huge thing. One thing, too, with the communication that I've really been wondering about is, and I know the school board can't wave a magic wand and just fix things. I get that.
Yeah.
I really do. I promise. Having said that, I mean, is there something that you guys think that the school district and the board providing, guidance? Because of course the board's responsibility is like high level policy, and then you have administrators who run the day-to-day stuff, right? You're not supposed to be micromanaging, everything that goes on in the schools, everything that goes on at the administration building. But from a policy level, what do you think that the school board and therefore the district could do to maybe help heal some of these ruptures, communicate, pull people back in to where we're a community again. I mean, a school community,
Sure.
where, what do you think needs to happen, and how serious are those divisions? What can we do? It doesn't seem like it's going to be an easy or quick process. I'm just going to throw that out there. I know it's a tough one.
I'm happy to. I can talk about this all day long. I think it's going to be incumbent on all of us to take a deep breath. From the school system's perspective, I would really like to see us just have in-person listening sessions. We've done some of those virtually, and they were reasonably effective. It kind of got to where the same people were coming each time, and you kind of knew where they were coming from, so that's okay. But
then nothing gets accomplished either, because it's the same people every time.
Yeah, you don't hear anything different. And I've always said people have every right to stand up for their kids in whatever way, as long as it's professional and kind. Any way they want to. But to me, it's all about conversation and relationships, and we've got some damaged relationships. I mean, there are people that if I see them on the street now, it's going to be hard for me to just nod and say, when somebody has told you after you've read a 500-page packet that you need to do your homework, that's, stuff like that. So
Right.
From the school system's perspective, I think we do, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't thought about that, but it would be nice for us to sit down and just have a community conversation. Maybe like this, Michelle, maybe with you guys kind of facilitating it. And,
Right.
Because,
That would be interesting.
It would be.
Because it won't,
doing some
if
live
it's
things.
Just,
Yeah.
If it's just...
I mean, I know the listening sessions that you guys did were great. And listening, though, inherently means kind of like one way, like let them talk, let them get it out, and then of course, like being on the board, you have to be like concerned of like what you sound like. Oh yes, that's a great idea. We should do that. Like when you don't actually have that power to make that happen.
Right.
But ideally, if the whole point is not necessarily the people in the actual conversations, but everybody else that's listening, that now feels like, oh, that person just said what I was thinking.
And what I wanted to know.
And then they realize there's more people that think the way I'm thinking on this. And then you feel maybe a little more connected. And then maybe the next time you see that person, on the street, or you're like, hey, I heard you in that conversation mention X, Y, or Z. Thank you for mentioning that. And that person's like, oh, wow, who are you? And like, I mean,
right.
I think it could be a way to
help
bring
build
more
those
people
community
together. So those listening sessions, if they could be more two-way.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. And I mean, you obviously know, and it was kind of clear that we can only be together 2 board members at a time, because otherwise it's a quorum or a meeting.
You have to put out an agenda.
Yeah. So you violate the open meeting laws.
Yeah, we don't want you to do that. I
Well,
don't want you to do that.
I didn't think you did.
No,
now,
I'll have to write about it. It'll be terrible.
No. But what I meant was, so it would have to be like the superintendent and 2 board members or something. But it really does need to be kind of like this. This is a nice forum just to go back and forth. And
right.
I mean, I don't have a pencil in front of me, but I have several things that I've already learned just from having these conversations.
Right. What do you think, Carly?
I actually have to agree. We need to figure out a better way to have a real conversation with people in society, because the community affects the schools, whether they realize it or not. And same and vice versa. So we just need to
and I
work
think,
together.
And we've shifted that somehow to Facebook comments.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And I've yet to see Facebook comments be a place of resolution.
I've never seen anyone go, you know what? I never thought about it that way. You are absolutely right. After someone flamed them on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen that. And it's just, I don't know. It's
Keyboard
it's
warriors.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is too much of that. And I mean, and I think people get in those echo chambers too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and when you just hang out with people who are like, no, the kids need to be in school 24/7. We got to play sports. We got to do this. We got to do that.
And then you get rewarded when people like your comments.
Exactly. You
You're
get that
inflammatory. You get rewarded. You're like,
Sure.
oh, 5
Yeah.
people must agree with me.
Yeah, those
Oh, gosh.
endorphins.
And
you
you've never
you get
talked
that.
to those 5 people.
Well, and then you start to think, well, everybody thinks this way.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks like I do, because all the people I talk to think this way.
I must be in the majority.
The algorithms will get you. They really
Oh,
will.
for sure.
Yeah.
I remember one time, it was the dumbest thing, and I know how algorithms work. I know how they work. But I remember I have this thing. It's dumb. I love Tom Jones. I don't know why. My mom used to watch the Tom Jones show when I was a little kid. She had Tom Jones albums. I love me some Tom Jones. Anyway, so there was a Tom Jones video on Facebook, and I liked it. And then pretty soon, I'm seeing all these Tom Jones videos, and I'm like, wow, Tom Jones is everywhere. He must be having like some kind of real career resurgence or something. And I mentioned it to my daughter, and she laughed so hard, she almost fell out of the chair. She's like, no, Mom, it's the algorithm. And I'm like, duh. But
Isn't
anyway,
that kind of scary?
but I was
mean,
very
so
excited
is-
for about 5 minutes
Yeah.
about Tom Jones.
Yeah.
But
You
I
can
think
still
that,
be excited about
Thank
Tom
you. I think I should be. I feel totally, like I should be. But anyway, but along the same lines, if it's something else besides Tom Jones, if it's hating on the school board, if it's being angry about something, you get similarly rewarded for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get that dopamine hit every time you see that someone else liked your post.
Well, and
Yeah.
I mean, really, we have to say there were several Facebook groups.
Yes.
And there was another
A
one.
variety of perspectives, right?
Yes. And it was like you're saying.
Yeah.
You didn't see a lot of cross
No.
group conversation, if you
Right.
will.
When
And-
really you're like, can we just get you guys together to have a conversation?
Well, it's interesting you should say that because
Yeah.
the people that Dr. Moore put on the task force to evaluate the
Situation.
Yeah, the situation. We'll put it that way.
We'll just
Thank
call
you,
it the
Carly.
situation.
Yeah, in the situation room, he intentionally put people from one obvious group, if you will, and people from another obvious group because that was something he wanted to hear both sides of, and I think those meetings were kind of interesting. I wasn't on that committee. Tanya Massey and Tim Riley were,
Right.
but anyway, I think your idea of having a community conversation is excellent. And
I mean,
especially
that's-
like Chris, like you say, if you don't get, 100 people there,
Right.
you might get several hundred listening.
Well, and this is where the pandemic is like the worst thing because maybe ideally like, okay, this is a serious deal. We would all go to the gymnasium or we would all get together and put you guys up on the stage there and people grab a microphone
Yeah.
and talk and then respond and like maybe, something, well, we lack the physical town square
Yes.
where
yeah.
this is where in the past where things were hashed out face to face and we've replaced that with very poor digital representative tools with Facebook. But with the pandemic, there's like, well, no, we can't like call 100 people together and put them all in one room
Well,
as a community.
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because
That's
ideally
for sure.
also as a community, then like those two kind of opposing groups would be the ones like kind of having to work it out amongst like the community and then let the board members know who are supposed to be the representatives of the community say, okay, they figured it out. This is what we think the way forward should be according to the community. And then of course that running through administrative and all that,
Right,
like, is
yeah.
this, can this actually be done? But
Well, I just think it's important back to the to learn from what we've done, especially if we haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
So, learn from parents, learn from kids.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, at some point, it would be really interesting to talk to the kids about what this last
Oh,
year was like for
absolutely.
them. I mean, I think these are profound. Yeah, especially for. I mean, when you're 10, this year's been a 10th of your life.
Well,
I mean,
and-
that's a big chunk of your life, a big chunk of the period of time that you remember. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the impact, the ripple effect that this has as these kids move forward.
Agreed.
I think a lot of people are thinking about that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What do you think has been the impact on your kids so far that you can tell?
I know he doesn't like doing school at home.
Now, is that because of his teacher?
No. His teacher has... Oh, teachers.
No, I mean you.
Oh, me. His
Learning
actual
coach.
teachers
I mean, Mom.
have been
his learning
awesome.
coach.
I think
Yeah.
it's been more... He doesn't... It's been hard because of his autism that
Oh, yeah.
it's harder for him to grasp the... He has to do this. He wants to just play in his room and not do schoolwork.
Because the environment didn't change.
See, and
Yeah,
I think
he's
that's
at
a
home where he
schedule.
plays.
And I think that's a cue for
Yeah.
kids, right? Because when it's like, okay, I'm going to go to school, and this is where I do school stuff. And there are these expectations because I'm at school. But if you stay home,
It's
it's
playtime.
like that's free time. Yeah. I think
That's,
that could,
and that's exactly why I
something that
chose
simple.
in person, because I knew he did better, even though I knew that there would most likely be times we would be doing school at home. Did I really foresee it being 90% of the school year? No, but I chose what I knew would be best for him.
right.
So
and how old are your kids?
he is 8.5 and my daughter is 3.
And I don't know what your situation is, but I heard from so many families that, the kids went to daycare during the day. If they're young, it's not like you can leave an 8-year-old by themselves
Yeah, no.
all day long.
You can't?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you can.
Oh, wait, mine's 9. They're
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Well, then that's a
Yeah.
whole different thing.
Totally
But
different.
I mean, I just remember when my kids back in the day I'd leave them at daycare. They could hold it together until we got home, and then it would be,
Yes.
whatever. And that we didn't have to sit down and do so many hours, X hours of schoolwork then too. So
Right.
it was a terrible situation.
Yeah.
And what haunted me was the little kids that didn't have a Carly for a mother, that was, with them and taking care of them. And, because families were just stretched to the brink. And, people on a regular basis in this society work 2 jobs, 3 jobs just to make ends meet, let alone in a pandemic. And
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Very tough circumstances. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things I wonder about, because we've been through this, and it would be nice to say, okay, we're moving out of crisis mode, we're getting back to normal, whatever that's going to be. But we know it's not if, it's when. Is there going to be another crisis we're going to face, right? I mean, I honestly think that this will not be the last pandemic. Hopefully it's the last one I see in my lifetime, a huge global pandemic. But I mean, these things happen now, and we know this. How do you think the district can and should prepare for the next crisis? And how do we move forward? I don't know. What do you think, Carly?
It's really hard to say because the schools actually have been fairly good. But I would like to see maybe better options or more options for PPE. And if they say that all the students are going to get a face mask, make sure all the kids get their face mask that is supposedly coming to them. My son still hasn't got the one that the school said he was getting. And here it is, end of March.
Were they going to get him a shield instead of a
No,
mask?
just a
or-
regular mask.
Oh,
Like all the
Seriously.
schools, everyone said everyone's getting a mask. Every kid's getting a mask, and he hasn't come home with one. And here it is, almost April, and luckily I was able to give my friend some money, and she made some that work for him. But I was kind of expecting another one so that it would be easier to rotate them all out and not have to wash them every day.
Yeah.
Well, sure. And I mean, to me, that's, you got to do what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Right.
all about
Yeah.
reliability and trust.
Yeah. And I'd also like to see the teachers not have to pay for their cleaning supplies.
And
So-
I don't know that they, I mean,
I don't know if that's actually happened here, but I've
Yeah.
heard that happening in other school districts.
okay,
So-
I'm going to throw this out. I think I threw this out in the one where we talked, when we talked to Marshall or Steve, that, I remember seeing that because, the whole survey that came out about, staff and teachers' concerns. And, there's a lot to be said about whether it was, how it was conducted, everybody self-selected, whatever. I mean, you can have all of that. But we do know that there was a big enough number of responses to represent almost 20% of the faculty and staff that said they had some level of concern, which I think is enough to prompt a conversation, right? I mean, I think it certainly merits a conversation. But I remember watching the school board meeting where, you guys were asking them if they had, if the teachers were having to buy their cleaning supplies. And, they said, oh, no, it's all in the warehouse and all they have to do is request it through their principal and they will get it. And I remember thinking, well, then why the heck was my teacher begging for Clorox wipes all the time?
Exactly.
I think I can answer that one.
Yes.
Because we were up to here.
Yeah.
You can't see me above my
But,
head.
but it's over her eyebrows. It's way up there.
It was like, help me out here. And part of the problem, I think, is that the wipes that the school can buy and authorize to be used, it's my understanding that they're a certain chemical makeup that kids are not supposed to.
Oh, there's
Oh.
some that are
Around.
like actual disinfectant,
Right,
higher level
right.
of alcohol or
And
something in it. that
There's some
could-
OSHA requirement.
Gotcha.
That, and I am not the one to ask
So the
detail about that.
So the stuff that kills all the viruses and everything might not be so kid friendly.
Correct.
Okay.
So, and actually, it was a teacher that pointed this out to us. That she said, I think maybe what's going on is that teachers, have asked kids to help wipe their tables down or whatever, and so they can't use these heavy duty wipes. So we're going to use these, and it was kind of like, duh. I'm not. I asked about this just yesterday because
Okay.
I hadn't heard the response, and I think they are considering, or they're going to be looking into purchasing those for the teachers. I think the argument is, do you want kids to be responsible for cleaning the surfaces?
Right.
And I'm like, well, no. I mean, obviously
Agreed.
not. That's
No.
not their job.
Sure.
But isn't a child taking a Clorox wipe across a desk better than not taking anything across that desk?
Right.
Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that the custodians won't come in and do a deep clean and,
Right.
all of that. But we can't expect the teachers to turn into super cleaners either. They've got a lot to do.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a lot of emails
yeah.
to answer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All those questions from
Yeah.
the parents and the kids.
Yeah, so that's my best answer to
Okay.
the Clorox wipes question.
Yeah.
Stay
I mean, and
tuned.
that's just one example of,
Yeah.
of things.
But it's true, and we've heard from teachers that we had a teacher forum that, one teacher said she'd gotten face masks and she'd gotten shields and she'd gotten partitions, and others were like, So it's been talk about communication. That I go back to that.
Does a lot of it just come down to communication, you think?
Well, I
Just,
assume so because
the flow of information.
I assume so. I don't know.
I probably agree.
Well, and from the school's perspective, we had this system that we were going to check things out, so we knew what the inventory was and all of that, which is fine. I think that's a reasonable system. But everybody didn't understand the system for whatever reason and
Right.
why it was that way.
Okay. All right. Well, we've been talking for a while. I mean, you guys
we
are
have.
great. This has been really fun, actually.
It actually has, yeah.
So, is there anything that either one of you wants to kind of get out that you want people to know before we wrap it up? Right.
I think just make sure that you can get out and vote. If you live in a Stillwater school district zone, even if you're not inside city limits, just get out and vote. Get out and vote.
And you can vote for all the wards.
Yes.
That's another confusing
Yes.
thing, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
You vote for
everyone's ballot
both school board
should have
seats.
the city council and
Right.
both school board seats,
Right.
and that is April 6th.
April
Unless you
6th.
live outside city limits, then you only have the school board seats.
Oh, that is true.
Oh,
Yeah. If you live
yeah.
outside the city limits, you're only voting on school board because you won't be able to vote in the municipal election.
So what's the limits? How far out of the city?
It
They,
really
they
depends.
kind
Live
of
to
jog.
vote.
They kind of jog. They go down to about 19th.
Oh, I guess
And-
you'd be looking at the school
I think
board
it's
map.
32nd.
Yeah.
Right.
That
19th
doesn't
and 32nd.
necessarily
Right,
Yeah,
because
line.
yeah.
the
Okay.
school district extends beyond the city limits.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
That's the
throws people
confusing
sometimes. But just know that it doesn't matter what ward you live in. You can go out and vote for any member of the school board. And that is April 6th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at all your normal polling places, with early voting on the 1st and 2nd, this Thursday and Friday, at the Payne County Election Board, which is on the second floor of the Payne County Administration Building, 315 West 6th Avenue. And these are important. These are important elections, the municipal and the school elections. We've all seen this year exactly how much they impact our day-to-day lives. So definitely get out and vote. It's in your best interest to have a say about these people who are representing you and making the decisions that impact you and your children. Thank
Agreed.
you guys so
Well,
much.
Thank you for having us. It was so nice to have this.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It was
thank
great
you.
to
This
meet
was
you,
kind
too.
of this was kind of an experiment. So I'm feeling pretty good about it right now.
If you just listened to this, you were expecting to hear Marshall Baker and Steve Halgren. There was an issue with formatting an SD card, yada, 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 and it's gone. So, first, I apologize to Steve and Marshall, who fit in their schedule to record with us. And I'll just let you know, it was a fantastic conversation.
It was amazing.
It was good. I would say if you haven't listened to the individual interviews with Steve and with Marshall, that they're very representative of those two gentlemen and candidates. So go back and listen to those again in lieu of my mistake.
You know, these things happen. They really do. But you know
Life
what it's done?
happens.
It's been a learning experience, and we've improved our process.
Yes.
And this is
there
what you do,
go. That's
right?
what you got to do.
Yep.
Exactly. We're all human.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yes.